Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from Group 6 and I'm here as the first speaker. My name is Fathul Ulum. My student number is 007. I will talk about the headline of first news. There are two versions. In Indonesian version, there is Wapres, vaksinasi aman dilakukan saat puasa. And then in the English version, it is COVID-19 vaccination can be conducted safely while fasting. Vice President Amin. In the headline of source text or Indonesian version, the headline of the source news is simply an action in direct sentence because there are colon that assigns for indirect sentence, and then the abbreviation of Wapres, that is Wakil Presiden, it means Vice President. Then we move to the headline of translated news or the English version. The headline of the translated news is kind of indirect sentence, same like the source news. And then the abbreviation on VP to indicate the Vice President. So it's similar with the source news, but the difference is in Indonesian we use first syllable each word to abbreviation, but in English they use first character each word. And then addition on COVID-19 before vaccination. In comparison with the source news, it means that the translated news is more specific. The author wants to emphasize that what is vaccination in this topic, but in the source news they are too general, just only vaccination. Then the addition on Amin after VP, abbreviation of Vice President. It's also in comparison with the source news that it is more specific in translated news than the source news, because we can see that Amin is Vice President of Indonesia, and in the source news they only stated that Wakil Presiden or Wapres. Last is conclusion of the first news, but headlines categorized as informative headline because it directly send the message of the information and there are no attractive aspect to make it a witty one. And then the news was published on 17 March 2021. It talked about Vice President Ma'ruf Amin said about the vaccination during fasting is safe and not break the fast. However, the MUI recommends vaccination at night after breaking the fast. Then we continue to the headline of second news. There are two versions. The first version is Indonesian version. Kemenkes tunggu rekomendasi penggunaan vaksin COVID-19 pada anak. Then the second version is English version. Ministry awaits recommendation to give COVID-19 vaccine to children. The headline of source news. The subject is Kemenkes. It is abbreviation from Kementerian Kesehatan, or in English it is Ministry of Health. And then the use of passive sentence. The word penggunaan, it can be signed as the passive. Then the headline of translated news. The writer only write ministry for the subject. So in comparison with the source news, it is more specific in source news because in source news it stated Kemenkes or Ministry of Health. So it clear that the author want to emphasize who the subject is, but in the translated news it is only stated ministry and it's too general. It can be ministry of what kind of what ministry. And then using active verb which is await. So the difference with the source news is the source news is passive and in translated news is active, because the word awaits or to give, it can be seen that the subject is an actor to give the vaccine to children. In conclusion of the second news, the news was published on 25 March 2021. and it is about Ministry of Health still waiting the recommendation from WHO, Itagi, and IDAI about vaccination to children. And it is categorized as is informative headline, such as in the first news. It is directly send the message to the information, and there are no attractive aspect that make to the witty one.
Hello everyone, I'm Zhalsa and I would like to present on the language of news that I have analyzed. So I have analyzed two pairs of news, which the first one is entitled Lanyala ingatkan pemerintah waspadai kemiskinan anak akibat COVID-19 for the South News or Indonesia version, and deputy speaker cautions of impact of COVID-19 on child poverty for the translated news. So the news was released on 6 March 2021 and it is categorized as hard news since the news was actual and should be known as soon as possible by the authorities. The news was reported to remind the government to put full attention on the impact of COVID-19, which especially on child poverty. As you can see on the headline that the spokesperson on the news was deputy's member, and from the headline of the South News and the translated news, it can be seen that the headline is concise, informative, and attractive. The headline seems concise since the headline simply stated the point of the whole news, and it is informative since that the news would like to report the impact of COVID-19, and it is attractive since the news would like to report about the impact of COVID-19 on society, especially on the children. So as you can see on the headline that the headline was written as direct sentence, and you can see on the headline of the South News that the word which firstly comes up was Lanyala, which in the context of the headline it was the spokesperson of the news, and here the writer wrote directly the name of the spokesperson. Meanwhile, on the headline of the translated news, the translator wrote TBD speaker to indicate the spokesperson of the news. So it can be assumed that the headline of the South News was more direct rather than the headline of the translated news. And from the headline of the South News, there was a negative verb ingatkan as the action of the spokesperson on the news. Meanwhile, on the headline of the translated news, the translator wrote the active verb cautions instead of reminds, and it might be assumed that on the translated news, the style was more firm to indicate that was an important thing to do in the future, which is to pay more attention to child poverty. And from the headline of the South News, the writer wrote a noun pemerintah to indicate as the object to whom the spokesperson would like to convey the context of the news. But on the translated news, the translator omitted the object and didn't write any objects or nouns as the objects on the headline. Therefore, it might be concluded that the headline of the South News is more specific rather than the headline of the translated news. So for the second news, the news is entitled Wapres minta percepatan vaksinasi di daerah for the headline of South News of Bahasa Indonesia version, and local governments should expedite COVID-19 vaccination (VP) for the headline of the translated news. So the news was published on 22 March 2021 and it is categorized as hard news since the news was reporting the actual information that should be known by society as soon as possible. And it can also be seen from the content of the news that it indicated the topic which is trending among society. The news reported that the Vice President asked the local governments to expedite COVID-19 vaccination, and the news also reported the Vice President had visited local governments in Lampung to check vaccination activity over there. So, as you can see on the headline of the South News and the translated news, that the headline is concise, informative, and attractive. The headline is concise since the headline just simply stated the point of the whole news, and the headline is informative and attractive since the news was about vaccination, which has been trending among society nowadays. And as you can see in the headline of the South News, that it was written as a direct active sentence. Meanwhile, on the translated news, the headline was written as an indirect sentence by putting a colon. And from the headline of the South News, the writer wrote Wapres, which was being a spokesperson on the news. Meanwhile, on the headline of the translated news, the writer wrote only VP to indicate the spokesperson of the news, and it can be concluded that both of them are abbreviations which indicated the vice president. And as you can see in the headline of the translated news, the first word that was written by translator was local governments, and if it is compared to the headline of the source news, the headline of the source news word di daerah to indicate local governments. So between the headline of the source news and the headline of the translated source, they have slightly different in the putting of the object to whom the spokesman would like to convey the context of the news. And from the headline of the source news, it can be seen that the writer wrote an active verb minta. Meanwhile, on the headline of the translated news, the writer wrote a modal should. And it might be assumed that should will just only refer to such a suggestion, but the headline of the source news, the writer wrote minta. So it can be concluded that the headline of the source news is more frame-oriented than the headline of the translated news. And it can also be seen from the headline of the translated news that the translator added COVID-19 before vaccination. Meanwhile, on the headline of the source news, the writer only wrote vaccinasi. And it can be assumed that the translator would like to emphasize COVID-19 in order to make the readers to be more aware towards vaccination for COVID-19.
Hello everyone, my name is Nur Tri Utami Dewi and my student number is 067. Now I'm going to explain the headline of Fifth News. There are two headlines. The first one is written in Indonesia and the second one is written in English. So first I'm going to explain the headline of Source News. The headline is 3.000 imam hingga marbot masjid di Kepri disuntik vaksin AstraZeneca. This headline is written in a simple sentence because and there is no compound sentence in the headline because we can see that the subject is 3.000 imam and marbot masjid, and the verb is disuntik, and the object is vaksin AstraZeneca, and the writer written the headline in passive sentence because we look at the verb, it is disuntik, which is it is signal the passive sentence, and the writer using abbreviation of Kepri, which is Kepulauan Riau, but I think this abbreviation is a little bit confusing because some people maybe don't know what Kepri is, and in the headline the writer choose to use marbot instead of penjaga masjid because we know in Indonesia we call penjaga masjid as marbot. Now I'm moving on to the headline of translated news. The headline is Riau Islands 3,000 imams mosque keepers to get AstraZeneca vaccine. It is a little bit different from the source headline because we know that the writer chose to use abbreviation to explain the city, but in English the writer didn't use abbreviation, but the writer explained completely, which is Riau Island, and it is located in the first it mentioned first, and the writer prefer to translate the marbot, so in the headline marbot is translated to mosque keeper. Yeah. And the conclusion of the fifth news is this news was released on March 26 and 26 20 and 21. And generally the news talk about 3,000 imams and mosque keepers in Riau Island getting AstraZeneca vaccine. And this headline is the part of hard news because it is inform who get vaccinated in Riau Island. And also the headline is the kind of informative because we can find out the aspect of who, what, and where in the headline. So what in the headline refers to the AstraZeneca vaccine, and where refers to the Riau Island, and who refers to the subject, which is 3,000 imams and mosque keeper. Okay, next is I'm going to explain the headline of 6 News. There are 2 headlines. The first one is in English and the second one is in Indonesia. So I'm going to explain in Indonesian first. So the headline in Indonesian is Gubernur Jabar, mutasi virus corona B117 sudah masuk Karawang. The writer written the headline in direct sentence because if we look at the headline, the subject is come first and mention the position of the speaker, which is Gubernur Jabar, but the writer didn't mention the name of the governor because I think because this information is crucial and have to be informed to the society, especially Karawang society. So the writer chose not to mention the name, but write the position, which is governor. And in the headline we can see that the writer mention specifically the name of virus, which is B117. So the reader will know what's the name of the virus. But unfortunately the writer did not check the headline before releasing the news because there is misspelling of corona. The writer wrote corona and it should be revised into corona. Okay, now I'm going to explain the headline of translated news, which is in English. So the headline is COVID-19 UK variant detected in West Java Karawang. If we look at the headline, it is quite different from the source text because in this headline, the writer omit the speaker, which is the governor, and the writer did not mention the name of virus. The writer only write UK variant, that it is not clear enough what virus and what the name of virus. So if the reader want to know what the virus, the reader have to read the complete news. So the conclusion of sick news is generally this news talk about the new variant of coronavirus in Karawang, which is UK variant, or we can call it as B117. And this news is the part of hard news because it is an important thing, so it has to be informed to the society, especially Karawang society. And the headline also informative headline because in this headline we can find out the aspect of what, who, and where. So what in this headline refers to the virus, and who refers to the governor or the speaker, and where it refers to Karawang. So I think that's all from me. Thank you.
Going on the 7 News, the headline from the source news is 2097 pasien COVID-19 dirawat di RS Wisma Atlet Kemayoran. While the translated versions of the headline, which is in English, is Emergency Hospital Wisma Atlet treats 2097 COVID-19 patients. The headline of the source news is a passive sentence which uses the verb dirawat there. And the subject of the headline emphasized the number of the patients which were treated in RS Wisma Atlet Kemayoran. And as the culture in Bahasa Indonesia, it used period to identify thousands, which is the number of the patients in the headline. Meanwhile, the headline of the translated news has different structure from the original versions of the headline. So, in the translated news, it used an active sentence, while in the original version, it is a passive sentence, as I have mentioned before. So, as it has different structure, in the translated news it also emphasizes different things. So in the translated news it emphasized the place where the patients were treated in, and also as the culture in English punctuations, it used comma to identify thousands, which is the number of the COVID-19 patients there. So for the 7 News headline is originally from Bahasa Indonesia and was released on March of 30. The headline of the two versions were concise and very informative. It delivers information about the number of COVID-19 patients who were treated in a particular hospital. So the word for hospital in the original headline is shortened into RS, which is originally rumah sakit, as I will be more succinct, and there is no functional word used in both of the headlines. However, there are some changes in the translated versions of the headline. First, in the structure. The structure of the original and translated versions are different. So as I mentioned before, the original versions is a passive sentence and the translated one is an active sentence. So they emphasize different things. As in the translated version, it emphasized the object in the original versions. And second is the name of the place. The name of the place in original headline is RS Wisma Atlet Kemayoran, but it is translated as Emergency Hospital Wisma Atlet. So there is an omissions and additions there. So rumah sakit is translated into emergency hospital instead of just hospital, and also there is an omission with the district of the hospital, which is Kemayoran, and also the additional for the word emergency in the word hospital is added there. And the last is the punctuations. As I mentioned about the culture of the punctuations in two languages are different. So in Bahasa Indonesia it will use period, and in English it will use comma to indicate thousands. The next is the 8 News. The original headline of the news is Satgas COVID-19 minta Pemda sosialisasikan pembelajaran tatap muka, while the translated versions of the headline is local governments should disseminate face-to-face learning information. So the headline of the source news is concise and informative. It uses basic verb minta instead of meminta, which includes affix, and it uses some abbreviations such as Satgas for Satuan Petugas and Pemda for Pemerintah Daerah. And also the original headline consists of subject, active verb, object, and adverb of purpose. The subject of the original headline, which is Satuan Petugas, emphasized the party who has urged the local governments to disseminate face-to-face learning information. For the headline of the translated news consists of subject, auxiliary verb, and object. So the subject of the translated version, which is local government, is the object of the original headline. It means that the translated version emphasized the local government which have been urged to disseminate the face-to-face learning information as a joint decree or SKB of 4 ministers on the learning guidelines during the COVID-19 pandemic has been issued. And also the headline in the translated news omits the Satgas COVID-19 which it is in the original versions, and also it adds the word informations in the word face-to-face learning informations, which refers to pembelajaran tatap muka. Well, so the 8th news headline was released on 31st March, and the news is about the COVID-19 National Task Force who has urged the local government to disseminate informations on limited face-to-face learning informations. So the subject of the translated headline is shifted or changed with the object of the original version, which is the local government. And there is a change in the verb from minta from the original headlines to the translated one, which is should disseminate. And also there is an omission in the word Satgas COVID-19. So the word Satgas COVID-19 is omitted, and it is added the word informations in the phrase face-to-face learning informations.